Chelsea,
Which
what do you know
ones?
about this? What do you think about
No,
it?
I-
Well, you look at growth. You look at economic growth under Democrats, and it's generally higher.
No, it
It was
isn't.
better under Nixon than
No.
most Democrats.
No, there was
I just
stagflation
showed you-
under Nixon
I just
and
showed
Ford.
you for the past 8 years, Obama had a worse economy, and it was worse proportionately for black people. So Democrats are demonstrably worse for black people in the past
why?
10
Because
years.
one president had
8 years. And he executed Democrat policies with great vigor.
Oh,
7 years of job growth. 7 consecutive years of
remember
job
that.
growth.
No, okay, it's been growth, but it's actually better under Trump than it was under Obama.
Trump's been president for 9 months.
Yeah,
Obama
and
was
yeah.
president for 96 months.
I know, but what I'm saying is it immediately began to improve under Trump.
Because
Trump's whole record has been better than Obama's.
well, some of that
Obama's record for employment was stagnating in the high 4s. Trump immediately improved it by 0.5%. Now, 0.5% may not mean much, but it means millions
to a lot of
jobs.
people, that, yeah.
Spread out over 300 million
well,
people, it's
let's
millions
we can
of
look
jobs.
at we can look at some of the reasons for that
Yeah, I
happening.
can tell you what some of the reasons are. Because they just interviewed the people at the stock market because it's the greatest stock explosion. It's the greatest stock market in the history of the United States.
Because
the people investing in stock believe that the economy is growing, that the economy is alive again.
well, they
It's on
believe
fire
that
again.
they believe that there's going to be tax cuts, particularly corporate tax cuts.
Well, isn't that marvelous?
And there are. I was looking at my tax plan under the Trump
Think
one.
about that.
Oh, yeah, no, I was
All
looking
right,
at
so,
what our
I mean, so
taxes
there's-
will be. They'll be less.
Trump wants to cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20% and get some of the trillions of dollars that are held by U.S. companies offshore so they don't have to pay U.S. taxes. And the stock market is looking at that money coming back in and feeling optimistic that that will happen. A couple of things.
Game, set, and match. Steve.
I don't have to disagree with you about everything.
But you're wrong about economic policy and you're wrong about foreign policy. At what point do you just change your vote to Republican? You admitted it was a mistake to leave Iraq. You admitted that the economy is going better under Trump.
No, the economy is more optimistic under Trump.
Well,
And that
maybe
means
that
people are more
maybe
willing
that
to
matters.
invest.
But
Yeah.
I'd also say that the stock market, if you consider the stock market as a thing of itself, like as an organism, say, it's not brilliant. It's got knee-jerk reactions. It doesn't think in the long term. It's easy to fool in some ways. Maybe this tax cut will go through. Now you got to say that even though we have this 35% corporate tax rate, that's most big corporations don't pay anywhere near that. GE basically pays zero because there are a gazillion loopholes and ways to avoid, like keeping money off. But so, I mean, I don't disagree with you that the stock market's been going crazy and that the stock market, the people who comprise the stock market are optimistic that there's going to be a big-ass tax cut.
Come to the dark side, Luke. Vote Republican.
You can have my brother. My brother
You
works.
know it is true.
My
what
brother-
does he say? You know it's, what is it?
You know.
I am your
You know,
father or
Luke,
something.
I am your father.
You know
this is
yeah,
true.
You know this is true. Could you please explain to Rick that Star Trek is good?
I'm a huge Trekkie. That's why I was such
All
a
right,
dork
all right,
in
all right,
junior
all right.
high.
Okay,
But
explain-
He said
oh.
you've got a problem with Trek.
All right,
I
you
take
you
issue
explain
with
why
that.
it's good, and I'll explain why I think it's not good.
What do you think? In the 60s, for something to have such an optimistic view of the future
All right.
was kind of radical.
I'll
in
tell
the
you.
60s?
I'll tell you why Star Trek wasn't good. I used to come home from junior high and high school, and the only halfway watchable shows that were on, because we were talking.
I like Dragnet, but
Dragnet was.
I like Dragnet.
Well, Dragnet was was
Jack Webb was a Republican.
okay. But it was humorless. I mean, every episode had basically the same plot.
Joe
They go out-
Friday's monologues.
I
yeah.
mean, you know what was a good show was The Untouchables. That show
I
was
like The Untouchable.
That was terrifying because anybody could die at any
Mm-hmm.
time. It was such a bloodthirsty
It
show.
was perilous from week to week. Yeah.
But when I came home from school at 3 in the afternoon, it was either watch Brady Bunch reruns or Star Trek reruns. And I used to I'd watch 20 minutes or 15 minutes of one of them, and they would suck ass, and I'd go take a nap. And the trouble with Star Trek is it's just not fun.
What?
It's
How is
not-
it not fun? It's
it's
William
not-
Shatner walking around looking ridiculous in a toupee.
Well,
it's fun.
It's not because I didn't know that like there's a deal where you can tell what part of the season that Star Trek is in by how big his
His
gut.
shirt is. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had special shirts cut to cover his girdle.
Yeah, because he'd get
'Cause he
into
got
shape in the off season, and then
And then he'd lose it. Yeah.
yeah, well, because you're shooting like I don't know 12 hours a day and stuff, and there's craft services, so you're gonna
And
eat.
Shatner took advantage.
Well,
yeah.
he's human. He's gonna frickin' eat. But there was like if you had if you had access to a transporter room, there should have been a kid on board the ship. And in fact, in later iterations of Star Trek, they had I don't know what is it, Wesley Crusher or
Oh, I
something. They
hate
had-
Wesley Crusher.
Well, I
Don't get me
I
started.
never saw episodes of that version or that generation of Star Trek. But a kid on board would take a dump in the transporter room and would transport poop down to the planet. That's what you
But
need.
it was a military ship. There couldn't be children on
No,
board.
but like there should have been. There was no advert. Like if you compare, I'm not saying Blade Runner is the most fun movie in the
I
world.
do like Blade Runner.
All right, but
though.
Blade Runner
it's
was
not fun, but I enjoy it.
all right. So Blade Runner had all these people looking in weird outfits. It's always rainy. You've got a gazillion
Yeah,
advert.
I just want to interrupt. We have 3 Jews right now, so there's no way I'm going to be able to paint his hand while he's talking.
All right, sorry,
Go
but
ahead.
all right. So the Blade Runner world is grubby. It's full of advertising. It's full of futuristic.
Exploitation. Yeah.
Yeah, Star Trek world is super clean. Everybody is, it teaches you morals. It's too clean. It's too boring.
I
And Star Trek was now Gene Roddenberry gets a lot of credit for trying to envision the future, but Gene Roddenberry was LAPD,
yeah.
and before that, I think he was a fighter pilot.
He was in the war. Yeah.
All right, so that's not a guy who's going to be super like revolutionary in his science fiction concepts. The trouble with a lot of science fiction and TV and the movies is that it's developed by people who aren't super steeped in cutting edge science fiction.
But see, that's why it's called science fiction instead of science fact.
Yeah, but
It can be fanciful.
Yeah, but like Star Trek didn't go far enough. It was just a bunch of people like going like
But it was
this every time they got hit.
1966.
Yeah, but still,
What kind
it was too uninhabited, too not lived in. It was a clean, nice ship full of clean, nice people in a.
But how do you know that's not what the future will look like?
Because
Maybe there will-
well, we live in the future now. The first Blade Runner takes place 2 years from now. It's set in
Wow, that's
2019,
crazy to think about.
and when you look at how effed up the present is, it's closer to a Blade Runner future than it is a Star Trek future.
But not to get too technical, but I believe Star Trek is set in the 2100s, so we've still got...
Or 22 or something. But yeah, but it's too clean.
We've got 150 years to go.
Yeah, but every time they go back to Earth, like Earth there's a plaza. People with good-looking people in attractive asymmetrical clothes are walking around.
I think they genetically engineered them to look good.
Yeah, but
everyone gets work done in the future.
That's true. But in the future, there's also like goth kids who have been genetically engineered to be, T-Rexes. And, the future's going to be a mix of awesomeness and messed upness. And Star Trek only shows this like really clean. Anyway,
I guess we have to agree to disagree about
Agree
Star
to
Trek.
disagree. Chelsea?